Hello and welcome to another video. In today's episode we are going to take a look at something really controversial, a question that comes up recently quite often in different Linux related forums, and a lot of Linux related YouTube channels are talking about it, and a lot of people give the wrong answer to this controversial question, and that is whether Manjaro Linux is Arch Linux or not. And so, if we want to delve into this question, we also have to talk a little about what exactly is a Linux distribution. And if you have a lot of time, you can, of course, look it up on Wikipedia, which has a very lengthy description with a lot of references on what exactly is a Linux distribution, which is often abbreviated as a distro. I try to basically give a concise description of this term. So of course a Linux distribution is some kind of like an operating system, or just generally speaking a bundle of software in which there is the Linux kernel. So basically people who are distributing software and distributing the Linux kernel with this software, that's where the term distribution comes from, and this term distribution is abbreviated to distro, the more you know. And so because the Linux kernel is distributed under a GPL license, a free software license, so basically anyone can pick it up and even modify it and bundle it with stuff and distribute it. And so those are the Linux distributors. And of course a lot of distributions, almost all Linux distribution also contain or package the GNU tools with the Linux kernel, and this sparks, of course, the age-old debate between Linus Torvalds and Richard Stallman whether people should call Linux-based operating systems with the Linux kernel, should they be calling it GNU Linux, because without the GNU tools with the Linux kernel itself is quite worthless, but it's just too complicated, so we just usually call these operating systems Linux operating systems or Linux-based systems. Of course, in a modern operating system, no one really wants to bother installing software manually, which would mean placing the binary files and all the required files that are the parts of the software into the appropriate place in your system's file structure. You want the software to do it for you. Those software are the package managers. The packages are basically just the files for certain software or other, which can be programs or themes or whatever can be in this package, and the package manager will make sure that each file in this package will be put in the appropriate place in your file system, and they will also have a database that will help removing each of these files once you decide to uninstall this software. And in a lot of cases the package manager works together with a build system, so a lot of times the package binaries are built centrally and are distributed in a binary form. But for example, in Arch Linux you have the Arch user repository, which contains a lot of source-based packages which have to be built on your computer before packaging it, and then the package is installed in your system. And so we talked about this process and how you can make this process more easier on Arch Linux with the Arch user repository and in Arch Linux helper in a previous video, so you can check it out if you are interested in this part of the discussion. And so a lot of cases a Linux distributor also packages a desktop environment or a window manager together with the Linux kernel and all this stuff. So the user will meet this graphical user interface from the get-go, like out of the box, so to say. And sometimes other software is bundled. It's like user-facing applications like Office suites or some distributions are packaged with a lot of multimedia tools like video editing software, audio production software, whatever. A lot of cases nowadays, these are also distributing proprietary device drivers, like drivers for your NVIDIA graphics card, or in some cases, some software company is basically financially supporting the distribution, and in return, the distribution packages like some promotional version of the software from these companies who are supporting the Linux distributors. And of course, all these Linux distributions also come with online repositories which contain the software that is available for that distribution. So nowadays everyone almost has a very fast, or at least tolerably fast, internet connection, so you can basically update your system through the web. And so the distributors of Linux also maintain these big online repositories, which basically you can synchronize your own computer to these. And of course, in a lot of cases, there are not just the official repositories, but other custom repositories, but those are not really part of the official distribution. So now that we are talking about what is a distro, well, what is in a distro, we already discussed that, but what exactly is a distribution? Is Ubuntu a distribution? For example, most of the people would argue that, of course, like Ubuntu, of course, it is a Linux distribution. It is basically a distribution of the Linux kernel. Why wouldn't it be? Well, you know that Ubuntu, and there is Ubuntu with the KDE desktop environment, and there is Ubuntu with the Budgie desktop environment, and there is also Xubuntu, which is with the XFCE desktop environment. Are these all different distributions, or are these just one distribution with just a little modification? What about forks? Is Ubuntu Debian? Is Linux Mint Ubuntu? Or is Manjaro Arch Linux? So how can we basically make these distinctions? And so I think basically a distribution is whatever the developers and the maintainers call it. A distro is mostly just a brand. So of course the Ubuntu is developed by the British company Canonical, and they are also maintaining different flavors. They just call them flavors of Ubuntu. There are official flavors and there are community flavors, like Ubuntu Budgie is a community flavor, and the Kubuntu, the KDE version, I think is a official flavor. But because the underlying package management, the underlying repositories are all the same, the difference is basically just what is the graphical environment that the user is presented with when they first start the installing medium, like the live environment. They just call them flavors of the same distribution. So it is kind of a branding issue. It's the same with Manjaro. Manjaro is also coming with different flavors. Like they also have like a Budgie edition, which is a community edition. They also have multiple official versions with different desktop environment, and they also have Manjaro Architect, which comes with like a more basic installer where you can kind of build your own system from the ground up. And of course, some other distributions like Arch Linux, there is no flavors to Arch Linux, as they put it. There is just Arch Linux, and then you just drop into the command line. Well, you don't drop into the command line. You start your live environment from the command line, and you just build your system ground up. But what if you have like an install script for Arch Linux? Will that be Arch Linux, or will it not be Arch Linux? Well, based on the branding of Arch Linux and based on the attitude, the official support, which is available on their homepage, they don't really support that. So most distros are free software, so anyone can fork them. So basically they say that if you write an install script for Arch Linux or a graphical installer or whatever, which is not endorsed by the Arch developers, which is not in-house developed by Arch. You can do that because Arch Linux is a free software, as most Linux distributions. So you can fork it and make them your own, but then you should use your own, brand for that, and you should support the user base for that. And so basically, in this attitude, a new distro can be just basically, which is a lot of Ubuntu derivatives are just someone made a new theme for the desktop environment on Ubuntu, and they just call it their own distribution. That is something that can happen. Or you can do, for example, what Manjaro does, is that they basically use the package management system of Arch Linux and the very similar rolling model for the upgrade or the updates of these packages, but they have different update cycles. They use these repositories in a little different way, and they also, of course, theme the desktop environments for their own liking. So that's also a possibility. Or you can build the whole system from the ground up. Like I think Solus is one of the examples for that. They built a totally new package management system and a budgie desktop environment also for their stuff. So they have kind of a ground up approach for this. So that's also a way to make a new distribution. And so based on this discussion that we've been having for the last 10 minutes, can we decide? So is Manjaro Linux Arch? And to my surprise, a lot of people say it is. So let's look at what their arguments can be. And so they both are based on the rolling release model. So that's a kind of a very basic similarity. But they not just both roll, but they also use the Pacman package manager and the packaging standards of Arch Linux. And so, well, we can argue whether the package management system of Arch Linux and Manjaro are compatible. Well, it's compatible, but like in Manjaro, you don't just have Pacman, you have PAMAC, or the other one that they use is I forgot the name of the other program. There in the KDE version, they have a not PAMAC, but another package manager. So anyways, so that's one difference, but we can argue that whether those software are really just a graphical front end to Pacman or a graphical stand-in to Pacman. It doesn't really matter, but because the packaging standard is quite similar, it's almost the same, and so they also have the build system that makes Manjaro Linux compatible with the Arch user repository. But well, they use the different repositories. So even though the update model is similar, it's not really similar. So if you go to the Manjaro Linux Wikipedia page, for example, they say how you can read about like non-security related updates derived from the Arch Linux stable branch to the Manjaro stable branch typically have a lag of few weeks. So basically they just get packages from Arch Linux and have like a slower release cycle. They release it to the users slower. I am not really sure how they are able to do this, because in Arch there are just so many cross dependencies due to every package is updated quite often. So if you just take the binary packages from the Arch repositories, then the dependency should be exactly the proper versions. So whatever, this is what the Manjaro developers and maintainers do, and they have fully the right to do that. And so they are of course different maintained by different people with different core values and for different audiences. So Arch Linux is of course geared towards a certain kind of person, and that certain kind of person is perfectly happy with the with this Arch install process and how Arch packages are rolled out. And so this is some kind of person, and of course there are other people who would like to enjoy some of the advantages of Arch Linux, like the AUR and the fast release of the new software out to the community, but they don't want to bother with the Arch philosophy or don't like the Arch philosophy. That's also of course a totally acceptable stance for someone, and that is who the Manjaro developers aim their distribution towards. And of course the branding is totally independent. Manjaro, Arch, they have their separate homepages, their separate logos. One is blue, the other is green. So I just totally don't get it on what basis people are trying to say that, well, you know, Arch Linux and Manjaro. Manjaro is basically just Arch Linux with an installer. It's not. It's definitely not. And so as kind of a final word here, I would like to add a few of my controversial opinions on this. So of course I'm an Arch user and I quite like the Arch philosophy. I like how Arch gives the control in my hands without trying to obfuscate the complications of the system. So I have kind of a direct look into how the system works in a lot of aspects. Well, of course, in computer science, everything is an abstraction, and everything is an abstraction of current flowing through microscopic or like even nanoscale silica particles in a chip somewhere. So, you know, there are levels of abstraction, and the Arch level of abstraction is kind of where it is fine for me, and I like how it works out. And so the thing is that if you are using Manjaro, so if I was some of the people who are developing and maintaining on Manjaro, which is, let's face it, it's not an easy thing to maintain a distribution with a lot of packages available for your users. So they are doing a very hard job trying to make you Manjaro users happy, and you Manjaro users are just trying to, you know, brand yourself as Arch users. Why? Why are you doing that? Don't do that to the Manjaro developers. Be very happy that they did this distribution that is a very good match for your use case. You don't have to be too apologetic about it. If this is what works for you, then this is what you should be using, and you should not pretend to be an Arch user. And there is nothing wrong with being a Manjaro user. I don't understand that kind of mentality. I think it is belittling to the Manjaro users. I know, like, the by the way I use Arch is a good meme, and it got to me. Like, I mean, by the way I use Arch was one of the things that really made Arch Linux visible for me. I am not using it because I like the meme or because I want to be able to say that, by the way, I use Arch, but this was one of the things that is kind of, from a marketing point of view, brought Arch Linux into my, you know, my field of vision, and I tried it out and I like it. I use it because I find it a very good distribution for my mentality, for my way of using the computer, and it helps keeping me productive and, you know, focus on the things that are important for me. And, you know, that's all. And this is not, Arch Linux is not for everyone. They don't want to make a distribution for everyone. They want to make a distribution for a certain kind of person. And Manjaro is a different distribution which they want to make their Linux distribution to different kind of users. So no, Manjaro is not Arch, and there is nothing wrong with that, and there is no problem in that. So this is kind of the end of my rant. I promise. I hope I could entertain you. Maybe I even gave you some new insights on the magical world of Linux distributions. And so if you like this video, why don't you consider giving me a thumbs up. You can subscribe to this channel for more videos, but I have to warn you that my upload schedule is going to be, well, not too much scheduled, because recently I got just very busy. But I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.